The symbolism of the tarot. Speculative philosophy arrives at the conclusion that the world undoubtedly exists, but that our conception of the world is false. This means that the cause of our sensations that lie outside of ourselves really exist, but that our concepts of these causes are false. Or to put it in another way, it means that the world in itself, i.e. the world by itself without our perception of it, exists, but we do not know it and can never reach it, because all that is accessible to our study, the whole world of phenomena or manifestations, is only our percept of the world. We are surrounded by the wall of our own perception and so unable to look over this wall into the real world. The Kabbalah aims at studying the world as it is, the world in itself. The other mystical sciences have precisely the same objective. In alchemy, the four principles of which the world consists are called the four elements. These are fire, water, air and earth, which exactly correspond to the meaning of the four letters of the name Jehovah. In magic, the four elements correspond with the four classes of spirits, spirits of fire, water, air and earth. Elves, water sprites, sylphs and gnomes. In astrology, the four elements correspond, very remotely, to the four cardinal points, the east, the south, the west and the north, which in their turn sometimes serve to designate the divisions of the human being. In the Apocalypse there are the four beasts, one with the head of a bull, the second with the head of a lion, the third with the head of an eagle and the fourth with the head of a man. And all these together are the Sphinx, the image of the four principles merged into one. The tarot is as it were a combination of the Kabbalah, alchemy, magic and astrology. The four principles of the four letters of the name of God, or the four alchemical elements, the four classes of spirits, the four divisions of man, the four apocalyptic beasts corresponding to the four suits of the tarot, wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Each suit, each side of the square that as a whole is equal to the point, represents one of the elements or governs one of the four classes of spirits. Wands are fire or elves, cups are water or water sprites, swords or air or sylphs, and pentacles are earth or gnomes. Furthermore, in each suit the king stands for the first principle or fire, the queen for the second principle or water, the knight for the third principle or air, and the page, knave, for the fourth principle or earth. The ace again signifies fire, the 2, water, the 3, air, the 4, earth. Then the fourth principle combining in itself the first 3 becomes the beginning of the new square. The 4 becomes the first principle, the 5, the second, the 6, the third and the 7, the fourth. Furthermore, the 7 again is the first principle, the 8, the second, the 9, the third and the 10, the fourth, thus completing the last square. Further, the black suits, wands and swords, express active qualities, energy, will, initiative. The red suits, cups and pentacles, express passive qualities and inertia. Then the first 2 suits, wands and cups, signify good, that is favorable conditions or friendly relations, and the last 2, swords and pentacles, signify evil, that is unfavorable conditions or hostile relations. In this way each of the 56 cards signifies something active or passive, good or evil, arising either from man's will or coming to him from without. Further, the meanings of the cards are complicated in different ways by a combination of the symbolic meanings of the suits and the numbers. Altogether the 56 cards present, as it were, a complete picture of all the possibilities of the life of man. This is the basis upon which is formed the use of the tarot for divination. However, the philosophical significance of the tarot is incomplete without the 22 cards of the major arcana. These cards have first a numerical meaning, and then a very complicated symbolic one. Taken in their numerical aspect, the cards form equilateral triangles, squares, and similar figures that have different meanings according to the cards composing them. The literature devoted to the tarot consists for the greater part in an interpretation of the symbolical pictures of the 22 cards. Many authors of mystical books have modeled their works on the plan of the tarot. However, their readers often do not even suspect this, as the tarot is not always mentioned. We have already referred to the book by the unknown philosopher, Saint Martin, A Natural Table of the Relation Between God, Man and the Universe. It is precisely in the tarot, says one of the modern followers of Saint Martin, that the unknown philosopher has found the mysterious links connecting God, man, and the universe. The Dogma and Ritual of High Magic, written by Eliphas Levi in 1853, Transcendental Magic, its Doctrine and Ritual, translated, annotated and introduced by Arthur Edward Waite and published by William Ryder and Son, London in 1923, is also written on the plan of the tarot. To each of the 22 cards Eliphas Levi dedicates 2 chapters, 1 chapter in the first part and 1 chapter in the second part. Eliphas Levi refers to the tarot in his other books, History of Magic, The Key to Great Mysteries, The Grand Arcana and others. Commentators of the tarot always refer to the History of Magic, by Christian Paul, published in French during 1854. This book gives an astrological interpretation of the 56 cards. Further, there are books by Goethe with strange allegorical titles, On the Threshold of Mystery, The Temple of Satan and The Key to Black Magic. The first of these books is an introduction, the second is dedicated to the first 7 cards from 1 to 7, of the 22, the third to the second 7 cards, while the fourth, that should have completed the detailed commentary on the tarot, never did appear in publication. Interesting material for the study of the tarot is given by the works of Oswald Worth, who restored the tarot cards and published besides this, several books dedicated to Hermetic and Masonic symbolism. In English there are books written by A. Waite, who gives short commentaries on the tarot pack as printed in England and furnishes a small bibliographical index of works on the tarot. Further certain material for the study of the tarot is given by Bouchard, de Crespe, Picard and the English translator of the Kabbalah, MacGregor Mathis. The French occultist, Dr. Pappas has 2 books specifically devoted to the tarot, Gypsy Tarot and Divinatory Tarot. And in his other books there are numerous references to and indications of the tarot, although they are obscured by a great deal of cheap fantasy and pseudo-mysticism. This list does not of course include all the literature relating to the tarot. It must also be noted that the bibliography of the tarot can never be complete, since the most valuable information and the keys to the understanding of the tarot are to be found in works on alchemy, astrology, and mysticism in general, the authors of which may not even have thought of the tarot or have not mentioned it. Thus, for instance, for the understanding of the picture of man, as presented by the tarot, much is given by Gichtel's Theosophia Practica, 17th century, and particularly by the drawings in this book. Poisson's book, The Theories and Symbols of Alchemists, is useful for understanding the 4 symbols of the tarot. There are references to the tarot in H. P. Blavatsky's books, both in The Secret Doctrine and in Isis Unveiled, and there are reasons for believing that Blavatsky attached great importance to the tarot. In the Theosophical publication that appeared during Blavatsky's life, Theosophical Siftings, there were 2 unsigned articles on the tarot, in one of which much emphasis was laid upon the phallic element contained in the tarot. However, speaking generally on the literature of the tarot, acquaintance with it is most disappointing, as is acquaintance with occult and particularly theosophical literature, because all this literature promises too much in comparison with what it gives the reader. Each of the books mentioned contains something interesting about the tarot. However, alongside valuable and interesting material, they contain a great deal of rubbish that is characteristic of all occult literature in general. Namely, there is first a purely scholastic search for the meaning in the letter, second 2 hasty conclusions, covering with words what the author himself has not understood, skipping difficult problems, unfinished speculations, and third, unnecessary complexity and unsystematic instructions. The books of Dr. Pappas, who was in his time the most popular commentator on the tarot, are particularly rich in all of this. Yet Pappas himself says that all complexity points to the imperfection of the system. He says nature is very synthetic in her manifestations, and simplicity lies at the base of her outwardly most intricate phenomena. This is certainly quite correct, yet precisely this simplicity is lacking in all explanations of the system of the tarot. For this reason, even a sufficiently thorough study of all these works does not carry any reader far towards the understanding of the system and symbolism of the tarot, giving no indication whatsoever as to the practical application of the tarot as a key to metaphysics and psychology. All the authors who have written about the tarot have exalted this system and called it the universal key. But they have not shown how this key is to be used. Below are given a few extracts from the works of authors who have attempted to explain and interpret the tarot and its ideas. Eliphas Levi says in Dogma and Ritual, Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual, on pages 462, 479 and 480. The universal key of magical works is that of all ancient religious dogmas, the key of the Kabbalah and the Bible, the little key of Solomon. Now this clavicle, regarded as being lost for centuries, has been recovered, and we have been able to open the sepulchres of the ancient world, to make the dead speak, to behold the monuments of the past in all their splendor, to understand the enigmas of every sphinx, and to penetrate all sanctuaries. Among the ancients, the use of this key was permitted to no one but the high priests, and even so its secret was confined only to the flower of initiates. This was the key in question, a hieroglyphic and numeral alphabet, expressing by characters and numbers, a series of universal and absolute ideas. The symbolical tetrad, represented in the mysteries of Memphis and Thebes by the four forms of the Sphinx, man, eagle, lion, bull, correspond with the four elements of the Old World, water, air, fire, and earth. These four signs, with all their analogies, explain the one word hidden in all sanctuaries. Furthermore, the sacred word was not pronounced, it was rather spelt and expressed in four words, which are the four sacred words, Jod, He, Vow and Her. The tarot is a truly philosophical mechanism that keeps the mind from wandering, while leaving its initiative and liberty intact. It is mathematics applied to the absolute, the alliance of the positive and the ideal. A lottery of thoughts as exact as numbers, perhaps the simplest and grandest concept of human genius. An imprisoned person with no other book than the tarot, if he knew how to use it, could in a few years acquire universal knowledge and would be able to speak on all subjects with unequaled learning and inexhaustible eloquence. P. Christian, in his History of Magic, History of the Magic of the Supernatural World and Fatality Through Time and Peoples, with Paris, Fern, Juvet and Sayers editors, on pages 112 and 113 describes, referring to Iambilichus, the ritual of initiation into the Egyptian mysteries, in which a role was played by pictures similar to the 22 arcana of the tarot. The initiate sees a long galley, supported by caryatides in the form of 24 sphinxes, 12 on each side. On each part of the wall between two sphinxes there are fresco paintings, representing mystical figures and symbols. The 22 pictures face one another in pairs. As he passes the 22 pictures of the gallery, the initiate receives instruction from the priest. Each arcanum, made visible and tangible by each of these pictures, is a formula of the law of human activity in its relation to spiritual and material forces, the combination of which produces the phenomena of life. In this regard, it must be pointed out that in Egyptian symbolism that is accessible for study, there are actually no traces of the 22 tarot cards. This being so, we have to accept the proposition of Christian on faith and assume that, as he says, it refers to the secret crypts of the Temple of Osiris, of which no trace whatever has remained, and with which those Egyptian monuments that have been preserved have little in common. The same can be said about India. There is no trace of the 22 tarot cards, i.e. the major arcana, in Indian paintings or sculpture. Oswald Wirth, in his book on Hermetic Symbolism, published by O. Wirth, on pages 38 to 40 and 83, Initiatory Publications, speaks of the language of the symbols in a very interesting way. A symbol can always be studied from an infinite number of points of view, and each thinker has the right to discover in the symbol a new meaning corresponding to the logic of his own conceptions. As a matter of fact, symbols are precisely intended to awaken ideas sleeping in our consciousness. They arouse a thought by means of suggestion, and thus cause the truth that lies hidden in the depths of our spirit to reveal itself. In order that symbols could speak, it is essential that we should have in ourselves the germs of the ideas, the revelation of which constitutes the mission of the symbols. However, no revelation is possible if the mind is empty, sterile and inert. For this reason, symbols do not appeal to everyone, cannot speak to everyone. They particularly elude minds that claim to be positive and which base their reasoning only upon inert scientific and dogmatic formulae. The practical utility of these formulae cannot be contested, but from the philosophical point of view they represent frozen thought, artificially limited, made immovable to such an extent that it seems dead in comparison with living thought, indefinite, complex and mobile that is reflected in symbols. It is clear that symbols are not created for expounding what are called scientific truths. By their very nature, symbols must remain elastic, vague and ambiguous, like the sayings of an oracle. Their role is to unveil mysteries, leaving the mind all of its freedom. Unlike despotic orthodoxies, a symbol favors independence. Only a symbol can deliver a man from the slavery of words and formulae, allowing him to attain to the possibility of thinking freely. It is impossible to avoid the use of symbols if one desires to penetrate into the secrets, mysteries, that is to say, into those truths that can only be easily transformed into monstrous delusions as soon as people attempt to express them in direct language, without the help of symbolic allegories. The silence that was imposed on initiates finds its justification in this. Occult secrets require for their understanding an effort of the mind. They can illuminate the mind inwardly, but they cannot serve as a theme for rhetorical argument. Occult knowledge cannot be transmitted either orally or in writing. It can only be acquired through deep meditation. It is necessary to penetrate far within oneself in order to discover truth. And those who seek it outside of themselves are on the wrong path. It is in this sense that the words of Socrates, "Know thyself," must be understood. In the realm of symbolism, one must not attempt to be too exact. Symbols correspond to ideas that by their very nature are difficult to embrace, and which are quite impossible to reduce to scholastic definition. Scholastics bring to the ultimate analysis only words, that is to say, something entirely artificial. By its very nature, a word is an instrument of paradox. Any theme can be defended by means of argumentation. This is so because every discipline deals not with realities reaching our consciousness by themselves, but only with their oral representations, with the fantasies of our spirit, which often allows itself to be deceived with this false coin of thought. Hermetic philosophy is distinguished by its being able to move away from words and immerse itself in the contemplation of things taken by themselves, in their own essence. There is nothing surprising in the fact that under these conditions philosophy divided into two streams. One had its origin in the logic of Aristotle, and maintained the possibility of arriving at the truth by way of reasonings, based upon premises regarded as incontestable. This was the official philosophy that was taught at ordinary schools, whence the term scholastic. The other philosophy followed another direction, always more or less occult in the sense that it was cloaked in mystery and passed on its teaching only under the cover of enigmas, allegories, and symbols. Through Plato and Pythagoras, this philosophy claimed to have come from the Egyptian hierophants, and from the very founder of their science, Hermes Trismegistus, which is why it was called Hermetic. The disciple of Hermes was silent, he never disputed nor tried to convince anyone about anything. Enclosed within himself, he was absorbed in deep meditation, and finally by this means penetrated into the secrets of nature. He earned the confidence of Isis and entered into relations with the true initiates. Gnosis opened to him and the principles of the holy ancient sciences, from which astrology, magic and the Kabbalah were gradually formed. These sciences, officially called dead, all refer to the same subject, to the discovery of hidden laws that govern the universe. And they differ from the official science of physics by their mysterious and transcendental character. These sciences constitute Hermetic philosophy. This philosophy is further distinguished by the fact that it was never content to be purely speculative, theoretical. As a matter of fact, it followed a practical aim, seeking actual results. Its problem was always concerned with what is called the realization of the great work.